What is up, everyone? It is 10 a.m. on the dot Pacific Standard Time. We are live with another family education and support group, the very first one of 2023. So let's bring the year in right with a lot of positivity, with a lot of love, with a lot of support, with a lot of hope, with a lot of education, a lot of information. My name is Param, your weekly host of this family education support group, and I look forward to being able to have another one with you guys. Cataline, it's good to see you too. We're back in action. And so as people start to trickle in and say their good mornings and say their hellos, just want to go ahead and do a quick introduction of myself and this live stream and the intention and the purpose of it. So my name is Param. Like I said, I'm here every single week. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy with an emphasis in child development. I am a licensed advanced alcohol and drug counselor. So all types of addictions, whether it's to substances or whether it's to behaviors, I have a little bit of familiarity with. I am in recovery myself since June 13th of 2008. So 14 and a half years and some change. I am a high school basketball coach. I've been coaching at the same high school for 14 years. And as of a few weeks, months from now, I'll be a community college professor teaching in the health and human services department at Saddleback Community College. And I am back, Jess. Let's just say here, you're back. I've been lost the past 2 weeks. As crazy as it sounds, this is one of my only constants in life. Hey, I'm glad to be able to add a little value to your world and to your life by having this live stream. I got some stuff planned up for this year. So I got some interviews coming in with people starting as early as next week. And I really want to add value to many Jesses out there. So all that being said, as you see, I'm able to do this interactive. You know, when people like my mom and dad say, what's up? I could put it up on there. When Kathleen says hi, I could put it up there. If you have any questions, you can always ask them. Through this platform, I respond back through this platform in real time. We got Pejman. Pejman, this is great news. That's where we attended school. Yeah, we did, Pej. So that was kind of one of my goals, was to be able to teach at that same program, the Human Services program at Saddleback Community College for the Alcohol and Drug Studies, and also the Mental Health Certificate program. So I'll be there. I got my onboarding Monday at 10:30, and we'll see what happens from there. But Pejman is also a proud graduate of that same program many years ago. So he also does really good things in the community. If you follow Pejman on any type of social media, he's much more active on social media than I am, but he's got Pejman Interventions, Pej Interventions maybe. And Pej, I want to get you up on here one day to come talk to. That'd be kind of cool. So let's get into what I have scheduled for today. Today, we're talking about the recovery process. Now, I believe that all people watching this are recovering from something. So whether you are the individual who is going through substances yourself, substance abuse yourself, addiction yourself, or you are a loved one of someone who is going through the addiction process, or even impaired mental health. So sometimes when someone is going through challenges with their mental health, with anxiety, with depression, with bipolarity, with different personality disorders, the feeling left to the caregivers around them is very similar to that of addictions. Very draining, a lot of questions, a lot of fear, bouts of hope and getting hope pulled away. There's a lot that goes into that whole realm. Good morning, Monir John. Good to see you. So I want to talk about what recovery actually means from that, because this is a recovery support group. So I want to talk about what recovery means. And by the way, sometimes from physical ailments, things that happen to our physical body, right? Losses of identity, losses of the way life used to be, and all that kind of stuff for self and those around us could have a recovery process. So we're going to talk about that. Before I get into that, I have this analogy I've been using for a long time. And it is the Mike Tyson analogy. So for those of you who are not familiar with Mike Tyson in the late 80s, Mike Tyson in the early 90s was the most powerful human being in the world. What I mean by power, I'm talking about physical attribute. I'm talking about strength. I'm talking about knockout power. I'm talking about what he would do. At the age of 18, 19 years old, Mike Tyson became the heavyweight champion of the world in the sport of boxing. Now, some of you have 19-year-old kids, and some of them are so weak and soft and flimsy. Imagine if at 19, that same child was the champion of the world in the heavyweight routes of boxing. What does that mean? That means that he would go there and he would beat up grown men that had been boxing for 15, 20 years professionally. He would just beat them up. And it was oftentimes a very, very quick, vicious knockout. Okay. So I'm going to use some analogies here. And when I'm done using my analogies, it's going to be long-winded. So bear with me. I want to be able to offer up a different perspective for you, whether you're the person going through addictions or the family member who's going through addictions. Okay. Let's say that Johnny is a person and Johnny just got a phone call that he is now offered to fight Mike Tyson in his prime. Okay. Now, Johnny has no experience with addictions, no experience with fighting. Johnny has no experience with boxing. And all of a sudden the phone rings and they say, Johnny, you have been selected to fight Mike Tyson in his prime in the beautiful Madison Square Garden Arena in New York City. Now, Johnny's like, oh my God, I'm going to fight the champion of the world. So Johnny goes and invites all of his friends and family to the fight. He's in the back in the locker room and he's getting his knuckles taped up. He has his mom, his dad, his friends, his people he grew up with, his teachers, his mentors. Everyone's there to watch him fight the heavyweight champion of the world. He has his hoodie on. He's walking towards the ring. His favorite musician, his favorite artist is playing music for him live as he's walking down. And he walks to the ring and here comes Mike Tyson in his prime. 19-year-old heavyweight champion of the world, Mike Tyson, comes to the ring. The famous announcer, the famous boxing announcer introduces Johnny in his corner. The famous boxing announcer introduces Mike Tyson in his corner. And the fight begins with a 3, ding, ding, ding. My friends, what happens in that moment to Johnny? Well, I'll tell you really quickly what happens to Johnny. Mike Tyson punches Johnny one time. It doesn't matter where he punches him on his physical body. It could be his shoulder. It could be his hip. It could be his face. It could be his chest. It could be his anywhere on his body. And Johnny's going down. He's out. And he tries to get up, but he's so dizzy and discombobulated. He falls back down. The referee calls the fight and says, this fight is over. Mike Tyson leaves and Johnny gets up defeated. His friends and family are looking at him like, oh, man, what happened there? And as Johnny is walking away, he thinks to himself, you know, if only I would have trained for 30, 60, or 90 days, if I had 90 days of training, I can go and I can beat Mike Tyson. So Johnny goes off for 90 days and he trains every day, twice a day, every single day, train. After 90 days, he gets a phone call. Someone says, Johnny, you've been selected to fight Mike Tyson in his prime, this time in MGM Grand of Las Vegas. And Johnny says, wow, I'm ready for this. So Johnny goes in MGM Grand. Some of his friends and family are there. Not all of them traveled because it was too painful to watch him get beat up the time before. Not all of his people are in the corner. And eventually, Johnny gets ready to come back out in the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. And guess what happens? He walks to the ring, gets to his corner. Mike Tyson comes down from his corner, from his ring. And the famous announcer says, Johnny. He introduces Johnny, introduces Mike Tyson. Ding, ding, ding. What happens? Well, let me tell you this. Johnny's going to get knocked out very quickly. And when Johnny gets knocked out this time, he's knocked out a little bit worse. He's knocked out to the point that, you know, like cartoons, the little Tweety birds are spinning around his head. And he's on the ground and he's not coming to. They have to run up to him and kind of wake him up and put some stuff in his nose and get him going. Mike Tyson leaves. And as Johnny is getting up after getting knocked out again, he starts to think to himself, you know, I didn't condition my body enough. I need to go away to some high altitude. I need to go away to Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead, to some Appalachian mountains and get my cardiovascular shape better. So Johnny goes off for 90 days and he trains, gets ready for Mike Tyson. All of a sudden, he gets a phone call. You got chosen to fight Mike Tyson in Wembley Stadium in London, England. And Johnny thinks to himself, I'm ready for this one. Well, this time his friends and family didn't travel across the pond to come to Wembley to watch him fight Mike Tyson again because it was too expensive and too painful. And he's over there in a foreign land getting ready to fight Mike Tyson. He walks out of Wembley Stadium. The crowd is there. What happens? I'll fill in the gaps for you. Mike Tyson is going to knock him out really quickly. But this time the knockout is so bad that they have to come and put a stretcher on the ring, and they have to put Johnny on the stretcher. They tie his neck in, they tie his hips in, they tie his ankles in so his spine doesn't move. They lift up the stretcher, and as they lift him up, Johnny raises his thumb to the crowd to let everyone know he's okay. Okay? And as he's being carted away inside of a stretcher with all of his limbs tied down, he thinks to himself, you know what? My boxing partners, the people that are training me, are not getting me ready for Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson is not, I'm not able to beat this guy because my training partners are horrible. They're weak. So he goes and finds new training partners for 30 days, for 60 days, for 90 days. He's training with new training partners. And all of a sudden, he gets a phone call and they say, Johnny, you've been selected to fight Mike Tyson, but we couldn't find any good venues for you. You're going to fight Mike Tyson in a small high school gym. And he says, okay. So he's there. He's got his new training partners. He's looking shredded. He's looking in shape. He's looking good. He's looking healthy. And he gets out to this high school gym, and it's only one side of the bleachers are down because the crowd, nobody shows up for this anymore. There's no friends. There's no families. There's nobody in the back. Johnny's just coming out on his own. He even taped his own knuckles because he can't even get a trainer anymore. And he goes out there with Mike Tyson. And what happens? I'll fill in the blanks. I know we're all rooting for Johnny, but I'll tell you what happens. He's going to get knocked out like that. When he gets knocked out, this time he is not coming to life. He is on the ground and he is not breathing. He's not functioning. He's not okay. All of a sudden, we hear a loud helicopter sound. As the helicopter goes on the football field of the high school, they take Johnny into the helicopter to airlift him to the hospital to take him to ICU, critical condition for human beings that are on life support. They take him away. Johnny's inside that hospital for 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. His family flew in because they have to have discussions with the doctors. Do we take him off the breathing device? Is his brain going to respond and react? Is he going to be able to remember anything? Is he going to be a vegetable? 9, 10 days goes by. The family's getting ready to pull the plug. All of a sudden, Johnny wakes up. It's a marvel of modern science. Nobody knows how this happened, but he's up. And as soon as Johnny gets up in the hospital, he starts to look around. He gets terrified about where he is. And all of a sudden he's like, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson. If I come out next time and fight this guy with my left hand instead of my right hand, he's not going to know what to do. I'm going to knock Mike Tyson out. And he goes and trains for 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months, 9 months. And all of a sudden he gets the phone call. Johnny, you've been selected to fight Mike Tyson in his prime. And he says, I'm ready. This time there is no Madison Square Garden. There is no MGM Grand. There is no Wembley Stadium. There is no high school gym. He's fighting inside of a small YMCA. No fans around, just 3 or 4 fold-up chairs. And here's what happens, my friends. This is what I need you to understand about addictions and recovery, whether you're the individual or the person going through it or their family. Mike Tyson. So Johnny walks towards the ring of this YMCA. There's nobody around. Nobody's watching. As he walks to the ring, he looks up at Mike Tyson. He looks at the ring. He looks up at Mike Tyson. And all of a sudden, he taps the side of the ring, turns around, and walks away. He doesn't fight. In that moment when he walks away, all of his friends and family and loved ones that have been avoiding this for so long, they all get behind him and walk away with him as a sign of support. All the people that Johnny thought don't care, they actually were there. They just couldn't watch that anymore. They walk away together. And here's the kicker to all this stuff. As Johnny is walking away, there's another person, we'll call him Timmy, is walking towards the ring. But Timmy isn't in the YMCA. Timmy is inside the Madison Square Garden with 30,000 fans, and he's got his hoodie, and he's got his friends and family. He's got everyone going to Mike Tyson. And Johnny and Timmy walk by each other, and maybe they rub shoulder to shoulder against each other. And in that moment when they rub shoulder to shoulder against each other, Johnny actually has a little compassion and feels bad for Timmy. You know what else he says? Thank God that's not me. Thank God that's not me. And as he walks away, something wonderful happens. He starts to live his life. Now, the reason I use this analogy, because addictions for the individual and their family is like getting beat up over and over again. And there is something called the difference between admitting something and accepting something. Admitting something means that you can acknowledge the fact that you have a problem with something. You can acknowledge the fact that every time I go in the ring, I get my butt kicked by Mike Tyson. Every time I pick up the drink, every time I pick up the drug, it leads me to bad places. But if that person continues to do so, they've only admitted it and they've never accepted it. The moment you accept that you can no longer do something, the moment that you accept that you can no longer go in the ring, that you can no longer take a substance, that you can no longer enable your kid, the moment you accept it, that's when freedom gets created, because a new possible version of reality gets unveiled. It gets open. And now I want you to replace Mike Tyson with addiction. Okay? How many people here that use substances kept going back in the ring 30 days later, 60 days later, 90 days later, 6 months later, 9 months later, thinking that this time they got it? And they go in that ring, and what happens to them each and every single time? They get knocked out. But when they get knocked out, they don't think I'm not going to go in the ring again. They say, okay, I just need a little bit of time. I need to feel a little bit better. I need to do X, Y, and Z, and I'll be okay. And they keep getting knocked out over and over and over again. And some of them die in that ring. Some of them die in that ring. I'm tired of hearing that freaking call. They die in that ring. Family members are the same way. Their kid does whatever the hell they want to them. And you know what they do? They keep going back in that ring again. Then they get beat up psychologically, emotionally, financially, spiritually. They get beat up and they say, I don't know what to do. Well, you know what? You can not go in the ring. How about that? You can stop going in the ring to get beat up, because family members do it the same way. It's a whole different type of twisted chaos. And yeah, I mean, it gave my mom goosebumps, and she remembers when I was in the hospital. Yeah, it's thank God I stopped going in the ring, Mom. You know, thank God I stopped going in the ring. And that is the difference between admitting and accepting. So the person that created or is responsible, one of the people that's responsible for creating these things called the 12 steps, his name is Bill Wilson. You know, there's Dr. Bob, and there's about 100 other men and women. But Bill Wilson, they asked him years later, hey, what would you do? What would you change if you could change one thing in the program of the 12 steps? You know what he said? That's a good question, he said. He said, I would go back to the first half of the first step, where it says that we admitted we're powerless over drugs and alcohol and that our lives became unmanageable. I would change that word admitted to we accepted that we're powerless over drugs and alcohol and that our lives become unmanageable. Family members the same way. You admitted that you're powerless over the addiction of your loved one. How many of you have admitted that? Each and every single one of you. No matter what you tried, didn't work. No matter how you tried to enable them and bail them out and do this and do that and do that, none of it works. So the moment you accept it, you stop going in the ring with addiction. You stop engaging with addiction. You stop interacting with addiction. And That's the difference that you got to get to in your recovery in 2023. You have to accept, not admit. Some of you have been admitting that there's a problem for decades. For decades, for 10, 20 years, there's a problem, there's a problem, there's a problem. When you accept it, you no longer engage with that problem. You no longer engage with that problem. But you know what? A lot of people want others to say, hey, make sure my son, make sure my daughter doesn't go in the ring. Who do you think we are? What type of power do you think we have to make sure somebody else doesn't go take an action? It's impossible. The day the person doesn't go in the ring is the day that they accept that they can't go in the ring. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about, with the difference between admittance and acceptance. With the side chat over here, if there's anybody that wants to talk about their own journey of like when they accepted it, they accepted their addiction, they accepted their loved one's addiction, what changed? How did it change? How did it feel? How do you stay in the state of acceptance? Feel free to write it on the side and I'll put it up, because that's a really good, healthy dialogue point that we can have and share about this. Because there's family members watching this live right now and later on in recording that they just know that there's a problem, but they don't accept it. They just don't accept it. And you know what? That's kind of like the drug addict that knows he's got a problem, but just won't accept it. There is no difference. I swear there is no difference between the family member and the loved one that will not accept the fact that something's wrong. They want to keep changing it and fixing it and controlling it and managing it. Well, come on. So did that fighter with Mike Tyson. That fighter with Mike Tyson, you know what he did? He got in better cardio shape. He did high altitude training. He changed his partners. He freaking, changed the stance, lefty to righty. And what happened every time? Knocked out every time. So what's up, Tony? Tony Tone in the house from San Francisco. Hope you didn't get washed away in the rain. I actually thought about you when there was all that, the cyclone happening in your area. So that's the first part I wanted to talk about. And again, if anybody has any feedback on the difference between admitting versus accepting, feel free to. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something, it's an ongoing definition we've had in this group. So for those of you who've been here for a while, you know this definition. If you're new, I need you to learn this definition because I use it all the time and we come back to it. So what is the recovery process? What's the recovery process? Right? It's a fair question. You're here for recovery. You're watching a family education support group related to recovery. Your loved one is in recovery. You yourself are in recovery. So what does that mean? What does recovery mean? That's a fair question. So in order to understand the recovery process, I need you to learn what the word recover means. The word recover means to regain something that has been lost, stolen, or destroyed. Okay? So all these people that say they're in recovery, the more important question is, what does that mean to you? Well, I'm telling you right now, recovery means to regain something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed. There you go. Tony knows it. Recovery means to get back what I lost. Same exact thing I just shared right now. This is a good one. Counselor Jim, which you guys know, it was really hard to accept that I couldn't manage my life or addiction, but when I did, my whole life started to change, and it has been changing ever since. When he says it's really hard to accept that I couldn't manage my life, it's not just with the drugs and alcohol, man. It's with everything. People that get into recovery, they realize that their emotions they don't know how to manage. They realize oftentimes how to live life and be self-sufficient and manage a budget and to live on life's terms. They don't know how to do that either. We want to fake like we know how to do it. But if your history and your evidence of your life shows that you've been unable to, then what makes you think that you're going to learn how to do it all of a sudden? You're not. So you have to accept the fact, man, the truth sets you free. The truth hurts initially. Acknowledging the truth is painful initially. But that's what sets you free. Being able to acknowledge and accept the truth. God, that's a powerful thing. But people want to resist it. People want to change it. People want to tamper with it. So when you're thinking about the recovery process to regain something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed, usually what is that? Okay. If you're wondering what it is, it's your connection to yourself. Now, why do we get disconnected from ourselves? Well, the process of life is tough. Like if you're growing up as a child and there's chaos going around you and it's too painful to pay attention to, you know what we do? We disconnect from it. If you had a parent leave you, abandon you, if it's too painful to acknowledge that, we disconnect from it. If you experience physical abuse and trauma to your body and it's too painful to acknowledge it, you disconnect from your body. You disassociate from your mind, from your body. If you are overwhelmed, stressed out, anxious, scared, and it's too much, we disconnect. If your loved one is going through the addiction process and you're constantly worried and anxious and stressed about what's going to happen to them, you disconnect from yourself, your own wants, your own needs. Your own wants, your own needs, you disconnect from it. So the recovery process is to reconnect to self, because that's where our power exists. When you reconnect to self. And sometimes when you're reconnecting, it's painful and it's difficult because you got to kind of look and see who you are. So enter my next analogy that I've been using literally since 2009, and I call it the two mirrors. So in life, we have two mirrors. The first mirror is the external mirror. It's the mirror that shows vanity. It's a mirror that shows external reflections. It's a mirror I stand and look in front of. I'm like, ooh, got some white hair, got some bags under my eyes. Looks like I'm a little tired. Got a little t-shirt with a couple lints on it. And we all look at that mirror on some level, right? When are you getting ready in the morning? You look at it, you give yourself a thumbs up, you give yourself a thumbs down, and you walk out the door. That mirror doesn't mean anything. It just shows a physical reflection of some body that's standing around in front of it. There's a second mirror that is called the mirror, the internal mirror. That mirror, when you stand in front of it, you look and see how long you've been disconnected. You look and see who you really are, what your character is about. You look and see what matters to you in life and your values. And sometimes we go days, weeks, months, and years, and we never stop and look at that internal mirror. How do I know this? Well, as a therapist and someone in recovery, I've gone to a lot of meetings and heard a lot of people share. And overwhelmingly, the majority of people towards the end of their addiction, you know what they say? I can't even look at myself in the mirror anymore. I don't recognize the reflection looking back at me. I don't know who I am or how I got here. That is only a byproduct of the fact that the person stopped looking at the internal mirror because it was too painful. And you know what? I'm blessed that I've gone to a lot of meetings and watched a lot of positive stories in recovery and heard the possibility of recovery. That when someone gets a year sober, 2 years sober, you know what a lot of them say? A lot of them stand in front of a group and say, you know what? I can finally look at myself in the mirror again. I like the reflection looking back at me, or I'm starting to like the reflection looking back at me. I'm proud of the person that's there. That means that that individual regained something that was lost, stolen, or destroyed. You know what that is? Connection to themselves. And there is no mystery to this stuff. I know there's no science to what I'm saying. I know this is not like research based and all that kind of stuff. It's just truth. It's truth. It's reported truth by countless human beings, just like this one, just like a mom. I did everything I could to stop my loved one's addiction and nothing worked. Finally, I surrendered and miracle happens. You know, you surrender means you accept. That's another word of surrendering. It means you accept. Let's see what Tony Tone has here. I couldn't manage my life, so at times I let the state of California manage it for me, and time again until I decided to take responsibility and accept the fact that drugs weren't working anymore. You know, the most important part of that sentence right there is that I decided to take responsibility and accept the fact. You know, you accept responsibility and accept. It's in there. The difference between admitting and accepting he admitted he had a problem. The state of California admitted he had a problem. He was always in some type of a state California issued outfit with numbers on it that were bullshit. But when he decided it, now he can be who he wants to be, what he's always meant to be, and this is acceptance is the key to all my problems today, but that doesn't mean I can accept everything today, but I'm working on it. And that shows that there's always growth in the recovery process. So we have this book, the big book, page 417 in it, which is in the back. So it's after the actual meat and potatoes of it. There's a lot of stories, and there's this thing called just go Google acceptance is the key to all my answers today, all my problems today. Very, very easy read, a nice paragraph that you can apply as a tool to your life every single time you're experiencing something that is hard to accept. And the beauty of it right there that Jim highlighted is you don't have to accept everything exactly as it is. It's the key to your freedom, but you have the right as a human with autonomy to not accept it. But you better start working hard to accept it. You better try changing your perspective to accept it. And if you can't accept it, then you got to accept it exactly as the way as it is. And that's hard to do sometimes. Let's see what Tony said here. I had to change the language that was going inside. Once I changed that subconscious belief, that outside started to change. What he's talking about here, and Tony's got some experience with CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy. We all have an internal dialogue. We all have things that we tell ourselves. We all have narratives that we believe about ourselves, about who we are, about who we're not. Sometimes those voices, the more pain, agony, trauma you've experienced, are harsher, man. Like, people say things to themselves that they wouldn't say to another person. I mean, I've seen Tony with his daughter, man. He's like a super dad. He's so cool and so awesome. Hey, she says hi. Right on time, Maddie. He would never say things to Maddie that he says to himself, And even despite of that, it's a constant working progress. So, and by the way, our diet is not just the things we eat. Our diet is also the things we hear, is also the people we surround ourselves with, is also the energy of the space that we're in. Our diet is all that we consume. Our diet is what you choose to look on these dumb phones. I don't call them smartphones, by the way. I call them dumb phones. They collectively make society a little bit dumber. And I know some people don't believe that, and some people are, really, really into the whole power of technology and this and that. But I subscribe to the Einstein way of thinking that I fear the day that technology will surpass our humanity. And it kind of sounds hypocritical as I sit here in front of a marvel of technological advancement that allows me to live stream from my living room to wherever you are and to create this moment. This is a really, really cool thing that we're doing with technology. But I would say that a lot of things we do with technology don't do what we're doing right now. There's people that you look on their screen times and they got 4, 6, 8 hours of just screen time, and it's the cell phone. I love the analogy that the cell phone's a prison. That's why they call it a cell phone, prison cell. And in the words of one of the counselors I used to have, he said that it's not bringing you anything but a bill, And I hope you use your technology for positive ways like we are doing in this case right now. But that was the second thing. So I wanted to for sure make sure that we talked about what it means. Mike Tyson is an addiction, right? And if you're tired of going in the ring with Mike Tyson, just stop going. And I know it's like, but if I don't, but I don't know. I don't even care. If you want to go there, feel free to. I'm tired of watching people get beat up by Mike Tyson, even when you say don't do it. Because unfortunately, the only person that's ever going to choose to go there is kind of what Tony said. Once you take responsibility and you accept the fact that you can't go in the ring. And if we had the power to prevent people from doing so, there would be no addiction in this world. And sometimes family members need to hear the same message. And then we talked today about what the recovery process really means, to regain something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed. And that's the connection that you have to yourself. When and where did you get disconnected? Why did you get disconnected? What was happening that you lost connection to yourself? And when do you want to get connected to yourself again? When do you want to grab a pen and paper and start journaling and trying to find out what went wrong? When do you want to put down the smartphone and get off Netflix and go in nature and and sit under some trees and just breathe and think about what's next. When do you want to go sit in front of a lake or a beach, and just kind of look at water and just get mesmerized by how powerful or calm it could be? When do you want to call the people in your life that you've been disconnected from and say, hey, I've been so caught up in my own head. I failed at X, Y, and Z, and I need support. When are you going to humble yourself to ask for help? When are you going to stop blaming people, places, and things for reasons why you're either using substances or why your loved one's not figuring it out? When are we going to take that thing of responsibility? And also, we talked about the two mirrors in life. Many of you, not all of you, obviously, many of you look at the external mirror all the time. You care so much about the external mirror, what it looks like, what it needs to look like, what it should look like. If only I looked this way, if only I decorated myself with certain clothes that have certain brands, and I drove a certain car, and I lived in a certain place, then I'm going to be okay. Yeah, right. Have fun with that. I'll take you to some places that there's some people that have very, 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 very high net worth, and I'll show you depression that looks like depression that some of us are familiar with. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. When are you going to start asking? When are you going to start looking for the internal mirror and finding out who you are? And if you don't know how to do it, a lot of us in this group, we subscribe to these things called the 12 steps, and the 12 steps allows you to actually take a look at that internal mirror. You actually do inventories of yourself the way a business would do inventory of their stock. What do we have? What do we don't have? Where are we in the red? Where are we in the black? How are we going to become a healthy, sustainable business in 2023? You could do that with yourself. You could do that with yourself. And if the internal mirror is too painful to look at, grab a professional, a counselor, a therapist, a life coach, and take a deep dive. Because what happens if you don't, you're just going to get more disconnected. How many people, like, a decade goes by and they're like, I don't know how I got here. I don't know what happened in the last 10 years. Man, that's 3,650 days that you did not stop and look at the mirror. In 20 years, what is it, like 7,000 some odd change, 7,300? None of this stuff happens by coincidence. I've never met with someone that's like self-aware and they tell me that they don't stop and reflect. They don't tell me that they don't stop and look at themselves. And let's see what we got here. Tony Tone. And by the way, it's for family members watching this, these comments that are coming in, these are coming from like counselors with like 15, 18, 20 years of experience. So it's like, these aren't just some random people. And some of the moms, which I'll put moms or family members or grandparents that, I'll put a comment there. These are people that have been watching this thing for 2 years. If you're new, I would suggest you listen. Tony said the subconscious does not know fact from fiction, just knows what it's told and makes it reality up. It's just narrative, man. Whatever you tell yourself, the brain's going to think it's real. Jim said that asking for help can be one of the most powerful things we can do. 100%. And it's each one of us have different levels of stubbornness, but the one thing you'll see that's common with all of those who've recovered, or at least are in the recovery process, that they all ask for help. And the beauty of it is, once you realize how powerful it is to ask for help and get help, then you want nothing more than to give it away. Love you too, Tony. Absolutely, man. You couldn't love me without loving yourself. That's for sure. Let's see what Eileen said here. Thank you, Param, for a great reminder of components of recovery, admitting and accepting. Even though you have relayed these concepts previously, it has a different impact hearing again with the layers of experience since the first time I heard the components. 100%. I mean, I try not to make them too repetitive. It's like, I won't do this one for the rest of the year, but I've done this a few times. It's actually one of my first ones. And not only are you in a different state, Eileen, from your own personal recovery and your healing and transformation and the insights that you've learned through the years, so am I. So if I go back and watch myself do the same talk 2 years ago, I mean, first of all, I look different for sure, but I didn't have all the same, exposure, experience, knowledge, wisdom that I have today than I had then. And the power of it, Eileen, is when I do this talk next year or 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I hope I look back at today and say, God, what the hell was I thinking? That's all I knew, because it's endless, the possibility of learning. Beta, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here all these years. Also, really appreciate you as well. I mean, like I say every week, I'd be just a crazy man in the living room if I was doing this on my own. And Jim, we'll just leave it with that. Tyson always wins. So my question to you, my friends, is if you haven't stopped going in the ring with Mike Tyson, when are you going to go? If not now, when? So next week, I'll be here with a guest. We have our director of business development, who's a strong woman that's in recovery. Her name is Kelsey. She's going to be here. We're going to be doing a split screen and talking about her personal journey of recovery, and also kind of what she does on a regular basis to maintain it, and how she helps the community, primarily females, but all community in our recovery space. And I got 3 more of those lined up for the next few weeks, that kind of stuff. And I'll be teaching some new material as well. And we'll keep on keeping on. Love and appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful Saturday. If you're somewhere that's really cold, I hope the weather's not impairing your quality of life too badly, and you got electricity and you got water and all that kind of stuff. So love and appreciate all you guys. I'll see you soon, and take care. Have a great week. Bye, everyone.